forward to talking with Christie Thomas today, and we'll be talking about her new book, Fruitful, 100 Family Experiences, talking about the fruits, how to grow the fruits of the Spirit. And I'm so excited to have Christie here. She is a homeschooling mama from Alberta, Canada, with 3 boys, a little bit like myself. And she was a children's director at her church for about 20 years, and she started up an online community called Little Shoots Deep Roots. And looking forward to talking to her. She's been a favorite author of mine for a while, so I'm super excited to chat with her today. Let's see. There she is.
Let's see. Oh, hello.
Hey, hello.
Here I was sitting and waiting and thinking, oh, maybe I should actually just go over to her profile and see what's going on. Oh, here we go.
I was trying all the buttons and trying to couldn't find you for some reason, but I'm glad you're here.
We did it.
Yay! Made technology work for us, which is half the battle. Well, I'm so glad you're able to join us today, and loving your Fruitful book that is coming out next week. Excited for you there. I have a few questions, but let's start with just telling us about this new book.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I have it here. It is 100 devotions for families to read together to grow in the fruit of the Spirit. So I know you've probably seen a lot of fruit of the Spirit resources out there. I found that most of what I can find is either a little bit confusing for kids. Like I found like crafts where you make a peach that says peace on it, which really literally means nothing.
True.
or they're very moralistic. Like, okay, let's, here's how we're going to grow in patience. Let's practice some things. And it really just completely bypasses the gospel, which is about Jesus and his forgiveness, but also his help with helping us grow closer to, or become more like Christ. Sorry, my dog was barking loud there. Threw me off. Anyway, so this one is kind of trying to walk that line between, there's that line between striving and self-helpism and doing it all ourselves. Right. And then there's, so on the other side of the spectrum, there's just waiting for God to do all the work. So we're trying to walk in between there. So the purpose of this is letting God work in us. But yes, there's an aspect of us practicing these things as well. So it's a little tricky to walk that line, but hopefully I got most of them. Okay.
I know. I loved your letter to the parents in the beginning of the book, and I learned a lot about the fruits of the Spirit, and just in those few pages, just to be like, right, this is about our relationship with the Lord, is how we grow these things. And they're not striving things or, objects we can just place on our table like a peach or an apple. They're things we have to work on and grow in ourselves. And there's just a lot of great resources you have in that book to help that communicate that and make it very approachable, even for me as a parent, not just for my kids.
Well, that's what I hope. I always think that the best children's writing actually appeals to adults too. It doesn't have to be shallow to be for children. You just have to use language that they can understand. So yes. Shorter word instead of a longer word. You choose a silly illustration instead of a serious, boring one. That illustrates the same point, right? So writing for children can definitely help adults grow as well.
Definitely. I mean, I know for me and my path of motherhood, I think there were times when, I couldn't have quiet times or really dig real deep. And so what my kids were watching, the Bible shows my kids were watching and the Bible stories I was reading to them was just as much fruit and meat for me than it was for them. And so I love that you can bridge that gap with children's stories.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing in the Bible. Thou shalt have a 30-minute devotional time, right?
Very true. It just says spend time with me. And sometimes reading a children's story or a children's Bible story is enough.
I can't tell you the number of times that I've wept, reading the Jesus Storybook Bible or something.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, God, you were so good.
Yes, exactly. Well, what part of this particular book was so much fun for you to write?
Some of the illustrations were pretty fun to come up with. There's a couple spots where I basically just tell a story. Like there's one where I talk about like finding a treasure box. Like you're finding it under a tree. You're going on a treasure hunt and you're following the map. And Some of the illustrations like that, those were really fun to write because it kind of like I like to write stories too, right? Because I have
Hmm.
Promise Rock and Quinn Says Goodbye, so I was able to channel a little bit of that into some of the devotionals, which was quite fun.
Yeah, it really probably spurred your creativity a lot too to think of it in new ways.
Hmm.
Way fun. So where do you find your inspiration for, your books?
Everywhere. In conversations with my kids. If I'm really stuck, I mean, obviously I'm going to pray about it all the time. We'd sit down and be like, okay, God, I need help. But then, he doesn't usually just drop an idea in my brain. I have to go and look. So I would look online and usually, or always, something would just be like, oh, there's the kind of the seed of the idea. And then I would close everything down and open up my word processor and just start typing and see what comes out from there.
Very cool. Now, you had been in children's ministry for many years. Is there a lot of what you experienced in children's ministry that led to some of these ideas that you've put in Fruits of the Spirit?
It maybe more so in like almost a don't do this kind of way.
Well, that could be
When I was
inspiration too.
right, I was quite a bit younger and hadn't studied the Bible as much, and so we did a lot of what I was talking about with the fruit of the spirit stuff, like where we would just be like the fruit of the spirit's like an apple, and kids are like, what? So I tried to veer away from that. So I would say I got more inspiration from my children now than
Mm.
from that experience. There are some stories in here that are about my kids that you would never know because I didn't say, oh, my son did this. But some of the
Right.
examples, as my kids will be reading it, they'll be like, that really happened to me. And I'll be like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know. Too fun. All right. So, kind of a silly question is, does pineapple go on pizza? So we're talking about fruit a little bit. This is kind of a question that gets a lot of different answers in my family. And so I thought I'd throw that out here since we're talking about fruit. Does pineapples go on pizza? I know they can, but would you say they go on them?
I would eat them if they're on pizza. I wouldn't pick them up. But I wouldn't ever go out of my way to put pineapple on pizza.
Right, right. My husband has a community of gamers that have this conversation, and gets heated at times. It's like, you do not put pineapple on pizza, or why would you not put pineapple on a pizza? It's very funny.
I guess I'd say I'm pineapple agnostic. I don't know.
I like it. I like that stance.
I would like people to feed me, and so whatever you feed me, I'm probably going to eat.
I wish my kids had that point of view. Well, kind of sticking with fruit, what is your favorite fruit?
Ooh, I like strawberries. I used to have not a huge front yard, a huge garden in my front yard, and it was full of strawberries. We would get like 50, 60 pounds of strawberries every year. Unfortunately, we moved and now I have one plant and I think I got one berry this year. But
Oh, yeah, I have some strawberries out in my vegetable garden too. And what was it? This last spring when it was so mild here in Texas, because it's 70 degrees here in Texas right now. So, and that's not normal winter weather for most of the world. But yeah, my strawberries just exploded because it was so mild instead of getting so hot. And those were some of the best strawberries we've ever had. I find it funny that each of my kids have a favorite fruit, and none of them will eat what the other one likes. So I'll have to go to the store for kiwis just for one kid and frozen blueberries for another kid. And so it's me and the fruit produce guys are friends.
yeah.
Well, in your home with your boys, what is kind of the biggest fruit of the spirit challenge that you guys have?
Well, this might be with a lot of children and humans. I would say self-control would be the thing that we definitely need to lean on God for a lot. For all of us. I mean, as a mom, it can be hard to control my temper sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
To ask God for, peace, I feel like, and self-control in that case go together. If I'm feeling more peaceful inside, then I'm less likely to listen.
Yes.
And then for them, just self-control with the way they talk to their brothers and treat their brothers and
Mm-hmm.
talk to their parents. We've had some, some issues with lippiness, and it's all just things that we're learning together, right?
Yes. So what is it? When you look at the list of the fruits of the Spirit, it's one of those like self-control is the last one, but I think you need that one the most to do all the others.
Yeah.
It's like, why does that one last? Either save the best for last, or you need that one to do the rest, because definitely is a struggle here in our house too.
I wonder if it's, I mean, maybe Paul didn't think this deeply about the order when he was just like listing things off the top of his head. But I think that self-control, you have an easier time with it when you're feeling more full of God's love and his joy and his peace.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're not going to be, self-control with food. If you're feeling joyful and peaceful and not anxious and worried, then you're probably not going to have such a problem with food, right? Or like I said, with anger, if I'm feeling more peaceful, I don't I don't lose self-control as often
Mm-hmm.
with my
Very
kids.
true.
So maybe that's why it's the end. Or maybe it was just Paul was like, oh yeah, self-control.
Oh yeah. Making the list for the day. Yeah, that would be an interesting question in heaven. It's like, okay, did you do this on purpose, or is it just random?
God inspired
God
that.
is, yes. Agreed. God was totally in control of that.
You're like, oh, there's one more. God, which one is the last one? Okay, here.
There you go. What is it? You do a great job in kind of the introductory and a lot of the helpful tips inside this book, kind of giving parents ways to engage their kids with these devotionals. Because I know I have a couple kids with ADHD, so sitting down and doing a nice little devotional time, like, Norman Rockwell painting is not usually what happens at my house. It's usually kids bouncing, and I've had to let go of a lot of my own control rather than have self-control when doing devotional times. But how do you encourage families to start a devotional time and engage into this devotional if they've never done a devotional format before?
Well, first I would start by sitting down with your family and saying, I'd really like to do this. When do you think is a good time for us to do this together? And then agree on it, instead of being like, okay, everybody, I'm mandating this. We're starting this now. Let's talk about this. And I'd love to do this. Doesn't this sound fun? Can I read you just a few lines, pull out a few funny lines or something? Mm-hmm. Like, Jesus is not like taking a bite of Jesus, like a bite of a sandwich, like, just to share that vision with them, and then make sure that you're starting with something simple. Don't expect that you're going to be able to have full participation right away. Mm-hmm. I would just, okay, guys, we said we were going to do this. Let's listen. And if they're kind of half listening, I'd be cool with that. Right. Yeah. And, you can always stop. You don't have to just read through, have you ever experienced, when there's a question in here, I expect families to be stopping and saying, have you ever experienced a big ferocious storm? Let's talk about that. So engaging your kids in it is going to make your kids more interested in it. Mm-hmm. And then you can say, hey, if we can sit and listen for, the 3 minutes it takes to read this, we can pick one of these activities from the front too. So I've got these hands-on growth activities. So you could use that as a bit of a reward, okay, after we're done this, we're going to pick one of these to do. Oh, we'll learn a breath prayer, or we'll make up a song or a dance for ourselves on this topic. So those things hopefully can help. So just keeping it easy, making sure your kids know why you want to do it, and then, like you said, about decreasing your expectations and giving up some control. We all have to do that when we're working with kids, right?
Very true.
In fact, I prefer talking to kids about stuff, because when I talk to adults, I find they listen so well. I'm like, this is a little bit disconcerting not to have anybody interrupting me right now, actually.
I know, you don't have to think on your feet so fast, and it's like, why is it so quiet?
Listening? I don't know. I'm actually kind of leery of people just sitting and listening.
I can understand that, yes. Let's see. Do you test your devotionals on your kids when you're in the process of writing this?
Yeah. All of them. So not all of them on every kid. I had to do 100 of them in less than 3 months. So I didn't have time to read all of them with every one of them, but I did make sure I read it to one of my kids. So then, because then I can watch for the reactions and If they look confused or if they're getting bored, then I can circle it and be like, oh, that doesn't work. Or if they ask me for the definition of a word. And sometimes they actually give me some really good ideas. There was something in here. Oh yeah, when Jesus and his disciples are in the garden, the olive garden, what's it called? Garden of Gethsemane, which is like an olive tree garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said something about Jesus would be annoyed, and one of my kids was like, well, maybe he would like stick an olive up their nose or something, like if he was annoyed. That's what I would do if I was me. If I was Jesus, I'd be sticking olives up their nose. So some of my like funny ideas actually come from my kids.
That's awesome. They're definitely my inspiration too, and they come up with the most bizarre thing.
Yep, perfect, right? Like,
yes.
Oh,
like that's
out of that.
What do your kiddos think about your writing, that you have these books out in the world?
Well, they think I'm famous. Well, no, I'm not. But they're like, wow, Mom, everybody knows you. You're going to be so famous. I'm like, well, in certain very small circles, maybe. Sometimes in Sherwood Park, like within the town that I live in, there are people that know who I am, and I don't know who they are because they've read my books or something, but that's about it. That's the only place I'm famous, is in the Christian circles in in my town, small town. But yeah, they think it's fun. They'll always want to read the books again once we get them, so that's good news.
That's usually a good test audience. What has been the most impactful Bible verse or Bible story in your walk with the Lord?
Yeah, I was going to look this one up. There is a verse in the beginning of Acts where James and John are defending themselves basically to the Sanhedrin. Mm-hmm. The Sanhedrin's like, wow, you know what? We can tell that you guys are just unschooled, ordinary men, but something has happened because you've been with Jesus. And I think that's really impacted me as a mom. Like, I don't need to have this amazing theological education, although I do have a year of Bible college and I want to continue learning. But being with Jesus and, you know, having him give me insights, that's enough. If it was enough for Peter and John, it's enough for me.
It's very empowering just to know that you can, and you know, through God, do what he's called you to. He doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when did you first call yourself a writer?
I don't know. Probably when shortly after actually it was more after my second book came out, because I had self-published a book, and it was mostly I just wrote it for the people in my church, and then people started buying, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool that it's not just the people in my church that want to buy this.
Yeah.
And then I had another book that was published, and it was probably around that time that I started feeling like, yeah, I am a writer, not just of books, but I write other things, write emails, I write blog posts, I make my living, and I impact people through writing. So I guess I am a writer.
Yep. It's one of those weird things that just you don't always choose that path, but you kind of find yourself in it. You're like, oh, I guess I am that person.
Yeah. Not like you go to school, you get an accounting job and you're an accountant. Like,
right.
I don't think I would like morph my way into being an accountant.
Yes, very true. Very fun. Okay, so kind of a reader dork question here, but if you could spend a day with another popular author, who would you pick?
I would really like to meet Sally Lloyd-Jones. She's written some really great, obviously she wrote the Jesus Storybook Bible and some other great Christian works, but she's also written some other like general market books that are fabulous. Like she has this book about this goldfish vacation where all these kids take their goldfish to the fountain and they have the vacation, and like, she's very prolific. Mm-hmm. And managed to write both for the general market and like just really good stuff, and then also just be really deeply spiritual and engaging for kids as well. So I would love to meet her.
Definitely. She's on my list as well. What is it? The Things That Make Your Heart Sing, her little devotional book. Mm-hmm. absolutely adore that book. And, with busy kids, to have just the 2-minute read that it is be so full of gospel truth it's still at my dinner table, something to pull out every once in a while.
Good one. I'm reading that one with my 7-year-old right now, actually.
Oh, yeah. I love that one. Have you guys read the shovel one yet? There's one about shovels. That's my kid's favorite, which it's very it's very interesting. So when you get to the shovel one,
oh yes, the one about the shovel with the
missing shovel. Yes, yeah, that one, my kids love that one. One of my kids is a little more sensitive, does not, but my kids are like, "Wow, this is really cool," because they like war stories. So, what are you reading right now?
I'm reading a book called Raising Critical Thinkers by Julie Bogart.
Okay.
And I'm still listening to a book called Mama Bear Apologetics, which is by the Bear Apologetics team. And I didn't listen to it for a long time because I kind of wondered if it was just going to be like lots of arguing. But it's actually very brilliant and very thought-provoking. So I'm really glad I'm listening to it, and I'm probably going to have to go buy it too.
Yes. It's on my list of books to read. So this big stack back right here. This nice stack. Oh, goodness. Well, with Fruitful coming out here in a couple of days, I know you're really focused on that and putting out so much great info of how to use the Bible study or the devotional and really equip parents to use this well. What can we expect next from you?
Well, I don't have anything yet. There's a few things that we're kind of working on in the background right now. So maybe something for preschoolers, maybe something for adults to help actually, learn how to do these habits, these kind of things at home. So if this is something you're struggling with, you just feel like you can't find time in the day to talk to your kids about God, or they're not interested and engaged, that's kind of my dream next project. But there's also this preschool thing kind of in the wings that I'm waiting to see what happens with. So
very cool. Very fun. I love that you're, so engaged in, ministering to kids through books, but as well as equipping parents and making them a part of the process. Because the parents are the ones who buy the books and for several years until our kids can read on their own, or in our desire to read on their own, which are two different things. It really is the parents, pushing, not pushing, but, encouraging and wanting to equip them to have a life that's full of godliness. And so I love that about what you're doing. Okay, I've got to kind of, let's see. Random question. This is something fun. What is the most random thing that has popped up in an Amazon or Google search for your name?
I can't remember what it was. Somebody told me the other day they found me through my LinkedIn profile, which I'm pretty sure still has a picture of me and my eldest, who's almost 13, when he was like a baby. So don't look for that. I'm also, this is what it was. There is another Christie Thomas who is also Canadian who has written a Christian book. And her book, like, look up my name, you'll often find like her book. It's like something to do with, anyway, it is definitely obviously not something that I can speak into because it's about like raising adult children or something like that. But it's super, both Canadian, they're both Christian books.
And doesn't she spell her name exactly the same way? That's hilarious. Oh goodness, so it's like your doppelganger by name is floating around somewhere in Canada.
In Ontario, I think.
Oh. Well, and I guess kind of my last question for you is, what is your favorite book? Aside from the Bible, but what is your favorite book? The one that inspires you the most?
I've always loved Anne of Green Gables. That's one of my favorites.
I kind of like that one too. Yeah. A little redhead.
Yeah, that's right.
Who loves books.
Yeah, exactly. She's a redhead. She loves books. She's got a great imagination. She just kind of wins people to her by just being herself. I love that.
Yes, I related to her a lot in my life. Was there anything else you wanted to say about your devotional before we say goodbye here?
Oh, well, it's currently like $5 less on Amazon than it was last week. So
Nice,
anybody
a
get
deal.
it, it's a really good time to get it. It hasn't quite released yet. It releases on Tuesday, but
Mm-hmm.
Amazon is shipping them. So I think, I mean, other companies will be shipping them right away here too, but Amazon shipped them like 3 weeks early. So
I know, I was kind of surprised to get mine. I was like,
yeah, I'm surprised when everybody got theirs before I got mine.
that'll be a fun story in your writing journey, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Christy, and just love talking to you and love your heart for your books and for kiddos. And I look forward to seeing you.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Call in here. I was like,
Oh, that's right. Second there. All right. Well, thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
yeah, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.